All wings report in.
HouseDog, standing by.
Mother Goose, standing by.
Lock S-foils in attack position. Animal Squadron ready for battle.
Hello there, and welcome back to Animal Squadron. I'm your host, HouseDog, and with me, as always, after almost a month of being apart, my favorite person to ride around the galaxy with, Mother Goose. Hi, buddy.
Hey, friend, how are you?
I'm happy to be here. It's been entirely too long.
It has.
We're out of the holiday season. I hope your holidays were good.
Yeah, I hope yours were good as well.
They were there.
And our viewers.
Of course.
Our viewers, I hope yours were great.
We hope that everyone's were wonderful, no matter what you were celebrating. If you weren't celebrating, that's fine. I just hope your winter season was wonderful.
Yeah. Unless they're in the southern hemisphere, and then it was the summer. Did I say summer hemisphere? I meant southern. Then it was summer. We just wish you well. That's
we
our
wish
point.
you well, and we're happy to be back is all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. So, HouseDog, you want to tell everybody what we're talking about today?
Yes, I will. We're talking about The Mandalorian again. Episode 2 of Season 1. Which is, I feel like it's more fitting now that we're doing this series, now that Mandalorian Season 2 has ended.
Yes, I completely agree. And that's actually a really good point. I just wanted to remind our listeners that this will be a Mandalorian Season 2 spoiler-free podcast. There will not be any spoilers for Season 2.
Well, I have to reel him back, folks, but sometimes he gets close.
Sometimes. I will admit I did have to cut some stuff out of our first episode.
It's okay. You
Also,
just get
if you
excited. If we hear what? What's going on back there? I see a cat running around.
Yeah, sorry. Viewers, I'm so sorry. Or listeners, I guess. My cat is full on crack and is just sprinting around my room. So if you hear something in the background, that's what's going on.
If you hear something in my background, it's ghosts or something. I don't know. I have nothing. It's just me.
Probably ghosts. Anyway, yes, there won't be
Hopefully
spoilers. I will cut out anything that's in there.
But whenever I feel like I say this every time, and I do, every time I rewatch, one of the movies, or now we're doing Mandalorian, I forget so much. I forgot a lot with this
Right?
episode. Not a whole lot
honestly
happens in episode 2, but it's still like an important episode.
Yes, it's incredibly important. We get some very important, I was not necessarily reveals, but some very important stuff for later. But why don't we just actually get into it?
I'm excited, and I'm very excited because Elijah's leading this episode.
I'm the note taker this time.
You are. I've wanted to do this without telling you for kind of a while now, because I just wanted to see what the episode would be like if it was a Mother Goose-led episode.
Well, to our listeners, I just want you to know that I had no preparation for this. He kind of just sprung it on me, so
I did.
It's gonna be great.
I'm that friend. I will not tell you anything, and it's kind of a sink or swim world, and I'm not saying you'll sink
or swim,
but I'm just kind of along for the ride on this episode.
Nah, it's time to rise above.
I want you to be Han Solo this episode.
All right, sounds good.
And I'll just be Luke.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Get into it, Elijah. Tell us what's going on.
Okay, so end of episode 1, the Mandalorian finds Baby Yoda. He's on his way back to his ship at the moment. So the episode starts, they're just walking, and I just really wanted to point out how much I absolutely love the Mandalorian's theme, because we just get, it's not long, we just get a couple seconds of them just walking through this planet as the theme's going, and it works so well.
But not only is the theme cool, and I'm so glad that your first note was a musical note because I always have those notes. So you're already doing great, Elijah. You're already doing great. It's like you don't even need me.
Thanks. No, don't say that. Of course I need you.
I know, but I had to be modest for a minute. No, his theme is amazing. It works on many different levels. But, visual note, we got to see Trandoshans.
We did, yes.
In real life, Elijah, in real life. I know it's not real life
Trandoshans.
but for us,
no.
it's real life.
It's real life. Yeah, that was my next note, that those poor bounty hunters, they tried. They gave it their best shot. They tried,
and well, I mean, that opening scene, now that I'm really thinking about it, it gives us a lot of stuff. Like legends-wise and stuff like that. I mean, we're seeing Trandoshans for the first time in real life, not in a cartoon. Well, right. I mean, we saw them in the original trilogy, but I mean, it's been since then.
It has been a while.
Well, it's literally been since the original trilogy that we've ever seen someone, and that was just Bosk in Empire.
Right.
We haven't seen any Trandoshans since then, except the cartoons. So it's been,
and then,
what, 40 years?
Yeah. Now, remind me, I think they were in Republic Commando as well, or that might have been another species.
I believe out of both of us, you're the only one that's played Republic Commando.
It's so fun. You've got to try it. We'll just move on. I was going to look it up, but it's not really that important. What's important, though, they show up, the Mandalorian kicks their butt.
He does. But what are they wielding, Elijah? What weapons are they wielding?
Oh, God, I don't remember.
So they're the axes, but more importantly, they're vibroblades.
Right. And
of course, vibroblades are one of the only weapons that can actually like fight against the lightsaber.
Right. And throughout the course of the battle, we actually get to see them injure the Mandalorian. It's nothing major, but that's like, even though he beat them, that's an accomplishment in itself.
Well, their species is, fully into, fighting and hunting and just being physically dominant.
Right.
So out of any species, I would figure that it would be them that could take on Mando.
Right. Especially when there's a group of them.
Correct. But like I said, just the vibroblades being there in episode 2 of a show that nobody knew anything about, and they're bringing in Legends content. I mean, how, I don't know. I mean, we basically pray to them every episode, but Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, my hat's off to you, sirs. Like, bringing in Legends content in the second episode of a show that's in its premiere season, that is would cavalier be the correct word, my good friend?
I think so.
Like, that is just a crazy move. It's subtle, and only diehard fans or people that have spent a lot of time within the Star Wars universe are like, oh my gosh, those aren't just axes, they're vibroblades.
Right. And so I think that brings up a really good point that's kind of been debated in the Star Wars community, but I know in other communities or other fandoms as well, is including things like that where only the hardcore fans will get it. And a lot of people in the industry, like the film industry, feel like, no, we shouldn't do that because that the general audience won't get it. They won't understand. But there's those few hidden gems like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau who really get it, that a general fan who may not know about the vibroblades can still enjoy that scene But for those of us who really, really love Star Wars and pour a lot of time and effort into learning about it, it just makes it so much better for us.
Exactly. And as we go through this season, that's one of the things that really made me fall in love with Mando was right now it's all we can say, but like those vibroblade moments of where they just did such a good job on being on the very edge of what some people would deem fan service.
Mm-hmm.
And I never felt that way with Mandalorian, ever. Not in the first season, not in the second season. I never felt that there was a moment of quote unquote fan service. I felt like they put in things that people like us are like, oh my gosh, that's this thing from Legends or the prequels or even the sequels or the originals. And it's just like, whenever things like that happen, they make me like, it's really like nerdy and sad, but like it makes me feel loved and like heard as a fan. Like, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni don't know who Mother Goose is. They don't know who HouseDog is, but whenever I see those things, it feels like they put them in the show for me or for my friends who enjoy Star Wars. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, and it's because they are Star Wars fans, and they're not just fans. They can tell that John and Dave have sat down with George and said, this is what we want to do. How do we not make it your Star Wars, but Star Wars? Right, exactly.
Because, George always said Star Wars is something that has to be handed down to the next generation.
Right. And something that's really important to him is just pushing the universe forward and not just staying
stagnant
in one place. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And that's what they're doing with The Mandalorian. They're really pushing it forward. And something I really like is they're challenging things. Specifically, not to get into too much detail, obviously in the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians took their helmets off. They took their armor off. They lived normal lives.
Right.
Yet, in The Mandalorian, Din, it is a very important part of his life. And so they're pushing the universe forward. Things are changing in the universe. While
at the same time not creating rifts within the timeline or breaking, I wouldn't say stereotypes, but just like cultural norms within Star Wars.
Right.
Right.
No.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I completely get it. I honestly was about to go on a big tangent, and then I was like, "Wait a minute, that's season 2 stuff." So I had to pull myself back.
You had to self-correct.
I had to self-correct. Yeah. Okay.
Please move us on because we have spent 20 minutes talking about the first 5 minutes of this show, like we always do.
Yes, but luckily, this episode was only like 30 minutes, so. We can't go on for too long.
We can, but we'll try to reserve ourselves.
Yeah. Okay, so following that, we see them camping, and the Mandalorian, he is trying to heal himself, and the child just keeps reaching out to do something. We don't know what yet at this point, but he's reaching out. And I just think it's really, it was really cute, but we could tell that he was actually concerned about the Mandalorian.
Also, well, there's a couple things I have to say here. That was cool because we see Baby Yoda getting out of the pram and like trying to be close to Mando, and you can tell Mando like already wants to be close to the child.
Right.
But he's a killer, he's a bounty hunter, he has to separate himself from that kind of life. He can't afford to love people because of the life he lives. And the other thing that I really like is we get to see Mando fixing his chest plate. and like welding on it, kind of. And whenever I rewatched this episode and that scene came up, I was like, I knew that like they had to work on their armor, you know, like it's not just a piece of metal. There's got to be more complex technology going on here.
Right.
Because it's Star Wars, nothing is that simple. But getting to see like the wires and stuff and the inner workings of his chest plate, and then you see, you know, his soft kind of like undershirt that the chest plate clicks into.
Yeah.
And understanding, okay, it's actually very complex. Like there's wires running across here, and there's actually technology going on here, and things are not just as simple as me just putting on a piece of metal and that's it. Like there's obviously like technological readouts and stuff like that going on through the armor. And you know, back whenever we just had like Boba Fett or just Jango Fett, we didn't get to see those kind of things. But we knew that it had to be more complex than, okay, I just put on an undershirt and then I put on some heavy metal over it. So to me, that was like a very like important moment of understanding there's a lot going on here with this very simple technology that just brings it into a larger world.
No, exactly. And we know that Beskar at this point is very rare. So it's very important for the Mandalorian to take care of it and to know how to fix it when things like that happen.
Well, the whole armor thing and kind of like the Mandalorian, like Creed and stuff, it kind of reminds me of like the Marines and how, you know, Marine snipers, whenever they get their sniper, you know, that it's kind of like whenever a Jedi gets their lightsaber, you know, this weapon is your life.
Right.
So that's kind of how I think about the armor, is like a Marine with a sniper rifle. You know, this is mine, there's many like it, but, you know, just a paraphrase there. But that's just...
No, exactly.
That's just kind of what I thought. Again, I say a lot of things and I don't know if they make sense, but we've been friends for years and I just hope that you can understand all of my ramblings.
Yes. I completely understand your ramblings. Do our listeners?
Probably not.
We'll just have to wait and find out.
Who knows?
Who knows? Okay, so following this, the Mandalorian finally makes it to his ship. But there's a little surprise there.
There is a little surprise. It's the return of Jawas. Who thought we would get Jawas again?
Right.
And we're not on Tatooine.
And we're not on Tatooine. And I really wanted to point out the color of their robes is different.
Yes,
it's
they're
gray
cloaks.
here.
Yes, I was hoping you would say something about that. So that's cool because we're not on Tatooine, but we still get Jawas, but there's a difference, which is cool because you can tell that, like, okay, just because they're the same creatures, they're just like people.
Right.
Just because
exactly.
two people are the same color or whatever, like, since they're from a different area, their customs are different or their cultural, like, little things are different. So they have gray outfits. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it was a really, really nice touch.
It was. It was it's one of those small details that they thought about, and they were like, let's give our fans Jawas again, because for some reason, everybody loves Jawas.
Everyone loves Jawas.
But how do we do it and make it fit within Mandalorian and it be a different story, but with things that remind us of our initial Star Wars home?
Right, exactly. It's a nice reminder of where we've been, but it's not an exact copy.
It's not. It's a great reminder of where we've been while moving ahead at the same time. That is what I thought was one of the best things about this show.
Yeah. So the Mandalorian starts disintegrating these Jawas.
Yeah. What
These
about
poor
that,
things
man?
didn't stand a chance.
And
I mean, I get it. I get why he did it, but I mean that was a little dark.
it. I mean, we talked about A New Hope, and how dark it was to see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Literally, they're burning skeletons.
Right.
So disintegration is not far off from that.
No,
But still,
no, not too far off.
With today's
still dark.
with today's
Still
technology and visual effects being what they are, to see a Jawa literally evaporate into thin air was pretty amazing.
Yes, no, definitely. Now the Jawas then make their great escape, and I gotta say, Din made a really good effort getting onto their sandcrawler. He was kind of far away. He ran, caught up to that thing, and was able to actually get on.
Din makes a valiant effort. I mean, sprinting, trying to get onto the sandcrawler. But the other cool thing is that shot that he made while the Jawas were trying to escape. He targets the back of the sandcrawler and shoots a piece of it that I'm guessing slows it down or
Right.
lets it
That's a very good point.
not be able to move as fast.
Yeah, okay, so I'm pretty sure he thought it was going to completely stop it. Because, again, even though he has a helmet on, the actor just does so good. And the reason I say the actor is because, just a reminder, there is actually 3 people
There is.
who are under the suit. So it might be Pablo. It might have been one of the others.
I'm sorry, who's Pablo? Do you mean Pedro?
It might have been Pedro. Dang it. It might have been Pedro, or it might have been one of the other actors.
No, it takes a lot of work to see Mando. So whenever it's non-action stuff, it's Pedro. Whenever it's like fight scenes, I believe it's and I don't know his name. I believe when it's the fight scenes and like really physical stuff, it's the black gentleman who does that.
Yes, I think so. And then there's another stunt double as well.
Elijah, why don't you look up those guys' names so we can actually give them full credit that they deserve? Because I feel bad not knowing their names.
While I'm looking it up, why don't you tell everyone about the rest of Din's attempt to get on the sandcrawler?
Well, he gets up there and he shoots. What's that called? It's not a bungee cord. He shoots the line out of his wrist. It's kind of like a grappling hook. He uses it to do many things. It's an all-purpose grappling hook, sure. And he gets up there, and the Jawas are just. That's what. Again, one like the cool parts about this show is, from the moment we know that the Mandalorian is a bad dude who you don't want to mess with, but he gets outdone by a group of Jawas, and I don't think that I could outfight a group of Jawas, but Mando kind of gets his butt kicked. And the part where he makes it to the top of the sandcrawler, and they're all just up there, and you just see all the Jawas like draw their little weapons, and Din's like, how many of these guys am I gonna have to shoot? And then they just stun him, and he falls off the top onto the ground, and you just feel bad for him because that's a relatable moment. Everybody's had those days where it feels like you get electrocuted by Jawas and fall off the top of a sandcrawler.
He really gave it a good attempt.
He did, and for all intents and purposes, Mando should be able to take out a group of Jawas, but there's something about those little guys. Whenever there's 20 of them, they work really well together.
He just had a bad day.
He's been having a bad day. He gets attacked by Transdoshans, and then his ship gets torn apart. The guy can't catch a break, man.
Yep.
Okay, so
okay,
tell us the
so-
names. I know you found them.
It's Brandon Wayne. He handles all of the gunslinging. And this actually, I didn't know this, was the grandson of John Wayne, apparently.
Okay.
And then, I'm really sorry if I pronounce this incorrectly, it's Lateef Crowder. And he does all the hand-to-hand combat and any of the major stunts.
Yes. Those guys are amazing.
They really are.
Yes.
Okay.
No, Mr. Crowder, you can tell he's definitely had a background in some form of like mixed martial arts or just like fighting, because you can tell by the way he moves in those scenes that like he's a professional. And then the gunslinging, of course, with Mr. Wayne is just incredible in and of itself. It's so like smooth, and it reminds you of those old-timey cowboy movies and stuff like that. But we're not in a cowboy movie, we're in Star Wars.
We are in Star Wars, but it is very inspired by old westerns.
It is. We said it last episode. It's kind of like Clone Wars. We have to keep bringing up all of those things.
Yeah. So one last thing I want to point out about that scene is the child's attempt to just keep up with the sandcrawler. I thought it was adorable, him just like flying behind, watching everything go down.
I know. What kind of world is this where there's a child in a pram floating behind this massive sandcrawler while Mando is trying to get his ship parts back and not being very successful, but they're crashing into rocks, there's rubble and debris flying everywhere, and then there's just Baby Yoda trying to get through it all.
Baby Yoda trying to do his best. Now, I want to point out a little later in the episode, the Jawas do try and actually get Baby Yoda, which we'll talk about that when that time comes. But I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, in all that confusion, obviously they were trying to get the Mandalorian off, but I'm kind of surprised they didn't make an attempt to try and steal him.
I mean, while Jawas are a formidable opponent in great numbers, they're still not very bright.
No, not at all.
So I doubt that they know that the child is important.
No, probably not. So, following this, we have the defeated Mandalorian returning to his ship, and the Razor Crest is pretty torn up. And I think really the only thing I wanted to point out is him trying to turn the ship on. He gets to the cockpit, he tries his best, and my first thought was, that's so dumb. Of course it's not going to work. But thinking about it, I probably would have done the same thing, at least to assess how bad it was.
Right. Well, you got to know where your starting point is.
Exactly.
The thing that I liked about that scene was him going to the weapons cache that he has in there and opening the doors. And
it's gone.
It's all gone. We saw it last episode, and I pointed it out then. I was like, man, I just want to play with whatever's in that cupboard. And
me too.
Then we see it now, and it's just gone.
It's gone. It's empty. And I mean, weapons are a very large part of a Mandalorian's life. Like, losing the ship was big, but losing his weapons was big as well.
Well, we saw how he handles that rifle.
Yeah.
So the ship is incapacitated at this point, and we get to see one of our old friends again.
One of our old friends.
Who
yeah, so he
is...
Oh, go ahead.
Honestly, he became one of my favorite characters.
Mine too.
And I was surprised by it, but, I mean, whenever it's someone voiced by Nick Nolte, you can't get much better than that.
No, not at all.
Which, I've thought about it lately, and I'm not mad that they didn't put Nick Nolte in the show as himself. He would have been a very interesting character, but I like that they just used his voice and they just made it an Ugnaught.
Right.
Because we don't really know a whole lot about the Ugnaughts.
No. But we know that this Ugnaught is very capable.
He is. He's like that just wise old man. Much like a Ben Kenobi, if you will. That's how I kind of think of him. Is like a Ben Kenobi.
He's Mando's Ben Kenobi.
He kind of is.
I mean, if you take away the whole Force aspect... Okay, HouseDog. That is a very good comparison.
That's like...
I really like this.
I think that might be like my first big thought ever.
Nah, you've had plenty of big thoughts.
A couple good ideas, sure. But no, that's kind of the first time I've ever thought about it like that, is this Ugnaught that we meet on this planet is... Oh, man. Again, can we just take our hats off to Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau? I mean, come on, man. We're just now figuring out that Ugnaught is Ben Kenobi.
He's Ben Kenobi.
How are we just now figuring that out, man?
It's been over a year now. I mean, I'm sure somebody's made that comparison before. Who knows? Maybe we're the first.
Well, listeners, if you can find someone else that has had that thought or that realization, or maybe we're just off our rockers, but let us know.
We might be.
Okay.
But yes, definitely.
So we meet Ugnaught Ben Kenobi again, and Elijah, take it away. Get us back into the show.
Okay, great. So obviously, what I really like is the Mandalorian is basically saying, like, I'm stuck here on this planet. My ship's destroyed. And the Ugnaught is like, no, some parts were taken. It wasn't destroyed. There's a difference. And I just really like that.
No, that line is very important, I think, because he says Jawas steal, they don't destroy.
Right, exactly.
Which I thought was super important because it gives these small characters that are not important. They're not. They're side characters that no one cares about. I mean, they were burned to death in A New Hope. Well, they weren't burned to death. They got killed by stormtroopers and then they burned their bodies.
Right.
But they're these side characters that aren't important for the most part. You know, they're not Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. But with that line, it gave those nobody characters life.
Exactly. It shows that he's a realist. He just says it how it is.
He does, but it just, like I said, it kind of blew my mind that we got to give humanity to these characters that have never had any.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was a cool moment.
It really was. My last note that I have there is I think this is the first instance we get of the child's weird eating habits as he eats a live frog.
I mean, Jabba ate Jabba ate frog creatures.
Okay, true, but the Hutts are the Hutts. Despicable. They're slugs.
They're slugs. But no, it was kind of disgusting that Baby Yoda just... It's just hopping along and he just picks it up and swallows it.
Yeah. And it's the start of a pattern.
It definitely is. But after they do that, Ugnaught says, we can go find your parts, man.
Let's go get them, my friend.
I also thought it was cool that it actually rains on this planet.
Yes, that was very interesting.
I didn't think about that whenever I think I originally watched. I don't think I thought about it, but it was like, it's another one of those details that's like, we're on a planet like Tatooine, but it's not Tatooine, and it rains.
Yeah. So something I really liked about this planet is I feel like it was more of it reminded me more of like the plains, maybe? Like a very dry plains where there's still some vegetation, and there's a lot of like hills and mountains. It's not just a big sand dune.
Right. It's kind of like the hill country.
Right.
That is an astute observation, my friend.
Thank you. So following that, we have the Ugnaught and the Mandalorian arriving at the Jawas sandcrawler, where they've set up their little market. They're ready to sell. They're ready to make their profit for the day.
Oh man, those Jawas. And of course,
those Jawas.
We get the wonderful line, "Weapons are part of my religion."
Right, and I wanted to point that line out because, I mean, yes, it genuinely is a part of his religion, but I just felt like that line had a lot of character behind it. It was a little sassy, but also serious. Like, no, I'm not putting my weapons away.
Right, it's like the armor. It's part of him.
Exactly.
It's not. It's an extension of himself.
Right. But of course, he's got to get off the planet, so he does what he must.
Also,
Go ahead.
The Mandalorian knows how to speak to the Jawas. He knows their language.
Right. Okay. I wanted to point this out. So obviously they're sitting. They're talking about making a trade. He starts to speak Jawas, and he's angry, because he stole the parts of a ship. He feels like they're his, which it is. And
well,
so
Elijah,
Jawa. Possession
is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah, you're right. Anyway, so the Jawa says that he sounds like a Wookiee, and I just thought that was so funny. But then, obviously, he shoots his flamethrower at the Jawas, and I thought, he's got a temper of a Wookiee as well.
Wookiees don't like to lose. They tend to tear people's arms off.
Exactly, and when you're not strong enough to tear someone's arms off, what's your next best option?
Obviously,
burn
my flamethrower.
Yep.
No, but
anyway,
like you said a minute ago, the line where he said, weapons are part of my religion. That's what was so amazing about this character. Is no matter who is truly under the armor in the show and portraying the Mandalorian, is those lines give him humanity. Like we said with the Jawas, those little simple lines that on the surface are, interesting or funny or whatever, but like you get to see who he is without actually seeing who's under there.
Right, exactly. Again, just amazing acting and amazing writing. So, obviously the Mandalorian wants his ship parts back, and so he's trying to make a deal. The first thing they want is the Beskar, which that's not gonna fly.
No, it's not gonna happen.
And then, as I mentioned before, they tried to take the child second of all, which I don't know what. I'm guessing they would have ate the child. That's the only thing I could think of why they would have wanted the child.
I completely agree. I think they were we're gonna cook him.
Yeah. But they come to agreement. They want the egg.
The egg. All hail the egg.
All hail the egg. I have never seen Jawas so excited for anything.
And I love their little like road trip
Right? They're just chilling,
in the
driving along.
they're all screaming, for the egg, and there's Mando just sitting in the cockpit like, what is this?
Right. Anyway, so they get to the location, and he finds a cave. Now, I absolutely loved how they filmed this, because he goes in, he's looking around. All we see is the Mudhorn's eye opening, and then it cuts to the child's perspective. There's a couple blaster shots, and the Mandalorian flies out. And then we get to see the Mudhorn. I absolutely loved the way they filmed it, because it created a lot of suspense. Because
In a very short amount of time.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, everything I just explained probably took 5 seconds maybe at most. But,
maybe not even that, but...
Right.
Another thing that I liked about him being in the cave, and it's not even that big of a thing, but how he has the flashlight connected to the side of his helmet.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of Clone Wars. I haven't mentioned it yet.
Oh, that's a really good point.
But you know how, obviously, since the clones were created from Jango Fett and his DNA, the clone armor is modeled after Mandalorian armor.
Right.
Like, if you look at it, it's very clearly they take from the inspiration of the Mandalorian. And whenever I saw him with his flashlight on the side of his head like that, it made me think of, seeing Rex or Cody with their helmets on and their flashlight on the side of their head that they had.
Yeah.
That was just a little thing that I was like, man, I miss Rex and Cody.
I miss Rex and Cody too.
But no, get back to our Mudhorn. He gets blasted out of the cave. And
blasted out of the cave, the Mudhorn comes out, and I just want to point out how good the CGI was. It looked so amazing.
It's that really fine line that Star Wars started testing as it got older and newer of practical effects between real effects, or excuse me, practical effects versus computer effects.
Right.
And the Mudhorn looks good. I mean, obviously it's not a real creature. Of
course.
But it looks like a real creature. And it's almost almost reminiscent of the creature that we see on Geonosis.
I know. I was thinking about that too. I had to look it up just to make sure that they were not the same species, which they're not. But they did look very similar. The Mudhorn has a much larger horn, though.
Oh yeah, but they both share character. Again, in my head, there's no way that John and Dave didn't think of the creature from episode 2 whenever they had the Mudhorn in their heads.
Right, there had to be some inspiration there.
There's just no way.
So early on in the fight, the Mandalorian gets tossed aside. The Mudhorn turns and charges the child. The child poses no threat to it. It's just a bystander. And the Mudhorn charges it all the same.
But equally as important, Mando's chest armor is completely scrap.
Yeah.
From the beginning, from one hit, as he gets pushed out of the cave, his chest is completely destroyed.
Which is a true testament to just how strong this creature is. Now, I don't think his armor was pure Beskar at this point. This iteration of his armor was probably a mix of Beskar and some harder armor, or some harder metals, so it wasn't as strong as pure Beskar, but that is still extremely impressive.
Right, because from the looks of his armor, you can tell he's been shot in the chest multiple times. I mean, he has marks and carbon scoring all over it.
Yeah.
But no, the Mudhorn is incredibly strong.
Now, remind me. So it gets to the end of the fight.
Yes.
The Mandalorian's been tossed around. He has the vibroblade, right?
He does.
From
I'm so
earlier?
glad you...
Okay.
No, it's his knife, but it is like
Okay.
a vibroblade.
Good. I just wanted to make sure. I just think this man, his willpower is so strong because he stood and he was ready to face the Mudhorn with just his blade.
But
Like, that's all he had left at that point.
that scene, or that moment, really is so, I think, important because, again, it's those influences that George had. That is a straight samurai move right there, my friend.
No, exactly. And I think it's also really important because it showed the child that the Mandalorian was willing to protect him.
I mean, he was faced with a threat, and Mandalorians only know how to solve threats one way.
Right. But the Mudhorn was, like, facing the child, and he stood his ground between the child and the Mudhorn.
Right, he was willing to risk everything.
Right.
But no, I think that moment of him just holding the vibroblade, it's all he's got left because his rifle is jammed, his pistol got knocked away, and it's just him. But in that moment, you can be like, okay, this is like Japanese inspired. Like, that's what a samurai would do.
Exactly. So, the Mudhorn charges, and what happens?
The Force.
The Force.
I mean,
we all had our suspicions
we did
about the child.
We did, because I mean, it looks like Yoda, so how could it not
Right.
have the Force? But even then, like, just that moment of watching this episode and seeing that for the first time, it was like, oh my gosh, it's not just Luke. Like, there's
not.
more. I mean, we know that there was more Jedi from like Rebels and video games and stuff like that, and things that are canon now. But I mean, to see it in a format like this again, it was like the first time.
Yeah, it was really amazing. And I just want to point out how strong the child is in the Force.
Yeah, that's obviously an incredible feat. I mean, imagine what the Mandalorian must have thought, because I mean, at this point in the galaxy, Jedi aren't really around anymore. I mean, this takes place after Return, so I mean, of course, people know about Luke Skywalker. People knew who Luke Skywalker was after he destroyed the Death Star in A New Hope. But the fact that, like, Din just sees this happen and he doesn't know what it is, and we know he doesn't know what it is because he's just staring.
Right. But then he gets his opportunity, and he stabs it. And I just want to point out, like, even if it's a vibroblade or just a normal knife, that is still a very impressive stab, because that blade was not very long, and animals that size have very thick skin. So he had to have hit that animal just right to kill it.
Right. Mandalorians are the ultimate hunters.
They really are. And then the child, he falls down, and he just needs himself a little nap.
He just needs a nap.
Which I really, really appreciated, because obviously this was a large feat in the Force, and we can tell that it actually drained him. Like, there was actually an effect to it.
Well, I think it's a good comparison as well, because if you think back to Empire, we see Yoda lift an entire X-wing out of a swamp, and then we see this child who, is the same species as Yoda, stop this giant creature. Yoda lifts the X-wing with very minimal effort.
Right.
And he's fine. So I thought that was a good, drawback to things that we've seen before, and then we see it now, almost in the same situation. It's a little bit different, but it's still kind of the same. But we see that, using the Force actually has a physical draw to it. Which I don't think we've ever really seen that before, that, using the Force actually takes a toll on the user.
Right. Yeah, so I was just really happy that they threw that in there. But I do feel very bad for the Mudhorn. I mean, it was just a mom trying to protect her babies. Or baby.
I don't know. Either way, Mando gets the egg.
Either way, he gets the egg, and it's a little gross. It's a little gross egg.
It's just furry.
It's just furry, and I like it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really unique. Obviously, it's an alien world. It doesn't have to conform to Earth standards, but I did think it was a little gross still.
But it's also interesting whenever you think of mammals, because you would think that a Mudhorn, which looks like a rhino, would have a live birth like all mammals do. So it is cool that it has an egg. Yeah. Don't stick to those Earth standards.
Why
Live stick to Earth standards?
Exactly. So they're making their way back to the Jawas, and we can tell the Jawas have given up and are trying.
Yeah, they're about to jet out.
Right. I can't believe they doubted him. But I guess in their defense, they did beat him in a fight, so.
Exactly. Okay, so Mando's back. He made it back finally, luckily, even though everyone had given up on him. Besides Ugnaught.
He never doubted him.
Never doubted. But they've got the parts.
They got the parts. The Jawas got the egg, which they cut open and devoured.
Which I thought that was wonderful. We see Mando go on this big task. He gets his butt literally kicked. And risks his whole life for this egg. And we think that, okay, this egg is something important. It obviously means a lot to the Jawas. They're probably going to use it for something. And then he just cuts it open with a machete, and they just eat the egg.
And they just eat it. It was all for a snack.
It's perfect.
Got his parts back.
It's perfect, though. That was a great moment.
Very in line with the Jawas. Okay, so they make it back to the ship where the Mandalorian says this is going to take days to fix. And the Ugnaught, I love it. He just has so much character, says it might go quicker if you actually help. Something along those lines. It wasn't a direct quote, but he has so much character.
For a man of few words.
Right.
I have spoken.
They fix the ship, obviously, and before the Mandalorian leaves, he offers the Ugnaught a job. And I think it's really funny because he specifically says, I could pay you handsomely. But he barely gets paid. This man is just getting by.
No, but I also think it's interesting the line he says a little bit before that where Mando says something along the lines of you helped me do all this, I have to give you a reward. And the Ugnaught says, you're my guest, I'm in your service. There's no need for a reward. I just thought
what
that was
a man of honor.
like amazingly, and Ugnaught told him in episode 1 that all he wants is his planet to return back to its normal state, and that's why he would help him, is because he's a Mandalorian. He's the only one that can get this job done, so he'll help him. And all he wants is just his planet to return to normal.
Which he succeeded. And then following that, he has a line about how he's finally free and he's not going to basically live his life for anyone else.
Right, he spent his whole life in servitude. And that is important, because even though we can tell that Mando isn't a bad guy, I would say. I mean, he's just doing a job. He's a simple man trying to make his way through the galaxy like anyone else. And he's offering him a partnership, and it's not that Ugnaught doesn't see it as a partnership. He's just like, I've spent my whole life trying to just be my own man. And I finally achieved that, so I'd like to keep it.
Yeah.
It was a very simple, beautiful moment.
It really was. And he turns on the ship, and they fly away.
And
credits roll.
Baby Yoda is still asleep.
Still sleeping. At which he does wake up at the end of the episode. And that's just kind of it. It was adorable, as always, with basically everything he does. But that's it. That's the episode.
For the second episode of a show, it was good. And some people feel that a lot of episodes in Mandalorian are like filler episodes. I never felt that way. Even with this episode, and this episode could be seen as a filler episode.
Yes, I have heard that argument, and I will say there are some episodes that aren't as important to the plot as others, but I wouldn't consider them filler episodes either, because they're actually good and they progress the story forward still. And I think the series would be really boring if it was just those really plot-heavy episodes.
Well, I think that's one of the beautiful things about this show, is these episodes that some would view as filler episodes bring life to other things that we mentioned earlier, like Jawas or the Ugnaught or the Mandalorian himself.
Exactly. Well, we do have a question of the day, but before we get to that, is there anything else you'd like to add about The Mandalorian?
No, it was a good episode.
It was a fantastic episode. Okay, so our question comes from Apple Juice again. Apple Juice, thank you so much for sending in your question. If any of you would like to have us answer your Star Wars related questions, you could send those to animalsquadron@gmail.com. Again, that is animalsquadron@gmail.com. Are you ready for our question?
As much as I can be.
Okay, it is, do you think there's a chance that Baby Yoda could turn evil?
Well, since this episode we find out that he is Force sensitive. That's like asking... I'm going to try to simplify it. Even though it's a pretty simple question, I'm going to try to simplify it even more from my small brain. The thing about good and evil, and I think this is like a Star Wars... I mean, obviously it's a Star Wars theme. The idea of good and evil. But it's also... With Star Wars... It's not as cut and dry as that. There's not just good and evil. There's the gray of it all.
Right.
So, just because a character may do bad things, it doesn't mean he's bad. It just means he's making different decisions. But yes, I think Baby Yoda probably could be evil if you want to see him as evil. I think anybody is capable of doing bad things. We're all capable of making our own choices. And since he is a sentient being, and you can tell that he's a sentient being because he's not an animal, he has a personality, he makes choices. We can tell that from just these 2 episodes that we've gotten with him. Anybody's capable of doing bad things.
Mm-hmm. So his follow-up, do you think he will?
It's possible. This is a lawless
it's very
galaxy.
Possible. A lawless galaxy filled with a lot of bad things. Now, I would say, very simply, I don't think he will turn evil throughout the course of the series. But I completely agree with HouseDog. There is definitely that possibility. There will always be the pull to the dark side. So, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
We will just have to wait and see.
Well, HouseDog, do you want to tell everyone what they can look forward to in our next episode?
I mean, it's either going to be Mando or another main film. We have Jedi left.
Yeah, Jedi. Oh, no. We have Empire Strikes Back next.
I thought we did. No, before we went on holiday, we did New Hope.
We did the holiday.
Yep. And then we did Mando, and then we did Holiday. Oh, man.
I think it's got to be Empire Strikes Back next.
I think we will have to do Empire. Empire's just... Empire means so much to a lot of people, and I like Empire. For new people, Empire is like a good movie for new people.
It really is.
And I'm not dogging on Empire. It's just... I'll have fun with it. What am I talking about? It's Star Wars. I'll have fun. If you come back the next time we have an episode, it's going to be Empire. We're going to turn it into a thing. We'll probably talk for 2 hours.
Or more. It's going to be a good one.
Or more. It's going to be great. But Elijah, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and your amazing content that you make?
I will. I bowed, and I remembered that the audience can't actually see me. You can find me on YouTube or TikTok. If you just search up Mother Goose 27, you can find me there. If you want to find any of my other social medias, you can find that on my About page on my YouTube channel. So that's my Discord, my subreddit, my Instagram, my Twitch, and my Twitter. HouseDog, I feel like we should probably do another shout out to the artist of our amazing cover art. Would you like to plug his Instagram real quick?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. He does great work. If anybody wants to look him up.
He really does. I'm so happy with our cover art.
I am too. It took a lot of work, and he did it in a very, very quick
short time.
Yeah.
I was surprised how quickly he got that to us. It was a very just smooth process overall.
All right, I got it pulled up right here. If anybody needs any logo work done, he does great work, like we've said. It's going to be RIGA Designs on Instagram. He's good. I recommend him.
He really is. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Animal Squadron. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will be back very soon. For the Animal Squadron, this has been Mother Goose.
And HouseDog.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.